I'm dumping a massive amount of stories from Greentexts, like literally years worth. Lost the picture files, still have the physical paper copies thankfully. It's a long story. Anyway, you can ignore this as I'm just gonna screen cap everything and repost it eventually. But yeah, I'm doing this by hand, so I'll probably have to keep making threads when the I get tired and thread dies. Sorry in advance. Me and brother and are in room on the floor. Late at night and our parents are asleep. We aren't supposed to be awake, so the lights are off. We're just quietly talking to each other and messing around with some Legos or something. We're more or less whispering back and forth non-stop like kids do. Something suddenly crashes downstairs, probably the cat knocking something over. We both pause. But the whispering doesn't. We look at each other. We are definitely not doing it. Something behind my brother moves. I go to say something and I get a brief view of it as a car passes. What I can only describe as a mummy is lying under my brother's bed, looking at me. It's not a bandage type mummy. This thing looks like a body that's been left baking in the sun for decades. It has very big teeth. It is reaching for my brother. The whispering is the sound of its skin on the floor. I scream and jump up. Turn on the light. It's there for a split second, then it's gone. Brother thinks I'm crazy. He didn't see it. Never tell him about it. Shove a bunch of boxes and sleeping bags under his bed. Make up some shit about seeing a mouse under there, he doesn't question it. Never saw it again. I'm 25, and when I was a kid I lived in a small town in California. It's a very hilly area, there are a lot of landslides. About 20 years ago, the city got disaster funding after a really bad one that killed about 20 people, and they reinforced a lot of the hillsides and leveled over the areas where the dirt was too thick to clear, or something like that. I don't really know the specifics of how they did it. Many of these newly leveled and developable areas became apartment buildings. I lived in one of these with my family when I was a kid. Important to note, I had no idea that our apartment complex was built next to where a landslide was. I was about 6. I started having terrible recurring nightmares of something outside of my bedroom door. The dream was always the same. I'm in bed, on my side, looking at the closed door. Cars are going by, and it makes the door look like it's shaking. I can't move. And I know beyond a doubt that there is something on the other side of the door that wants to come in. That's the whole dream. It sounds dumb, but it was horrifying. One night, I wake up after having this dream. Still in that half-awake state where I don't know what's real and what I'm just thinking, if that makes sense. I go to get up and a car passes by. It makes the door look like it's shaking. I come to a complete, dead stop. Something is on the other side of the door. I peed myself. Something is scratching the bottom of the door. At this point it felt like I was no longer in control of my own body. I watched myself walk forward and open the door. I looked down. Something was on the floor. Something horrible, deformed, broken. A literal human pancake. There weren't legs anymore, just strings of flesh and muscle. The head was snapped back, resting between the shoulder blades. One eye had been destroyed by a rock. The other wept blood, but I could see it looking at me. I could hear the shattered bones in its flattened spine rumbling as it reached its battered, floppy arm up to scratch at my feet. Just before it touched me, I opened my mouth and screamed as loud as I could. My mom came sprinting out of her room and she saw it too. She started screaming, and as soon as she turned the light on it was gone. Slept with them until we moved out a couple weeks later. I always had this really weird dream when I was a kid. In the dream I'd be lying in bed looking at the door. A huge dog, like a German Shepherd, is in the doorway. For some reason, the dog is pixelated. Kind of blocky, like an old video game. But it's not a cartoon. It's like a real dog but pixelated. It moves into the room but it doesn't move its legs, it just glides in. Turns, again not moving its legs. Glides up toward the head of the bed. Stops about 3 feet from me. Turns. Faces me. The pixelation melts, or blends together, and this hellish screaming dog face with eyes that are on fire lunges at my face, shrieking. Wake up. I also had the super vivid dream when I had pneumonia as a little kid. Super sick, really high fever. Pass out early in the evening when the sun is still up. Dream that I'm walking in the forest behind my elementary school. All my classmates are fucking around doing various things around me. My childhood crush is holding my hand as we walk down this path. It's a super innocent cute dream. My friend Sydney suddenly runs in front of us and jumps into a puddle. The second her boots hit the surface of the water, I'm ripped out of the dream by this huge clap of thunder. I'm instantly wide awake. I can't move. I can't open my eyes. What the fuck is going on? Someone's there? I can hear breathing. Lightning flashes and I can see it behind my eyelids. Something strokes the side of my face. I can't scream. It has long sharp nails and clammy skin. It fucking leans down and whispers in my ear. Yes. Yes. It hisses the words out. It's an old woman. It's a fucking witch. I manage to pry my mouth open and scream my fucking lungs out. Mom runs upstairs, helps me open my eyes. Fucking traumatized the hell out of me. My step-aunt was killed at Yellowstone last year. Hiking around Yellowstone with a bunch of family. Step-aunt and her kids, dad, and me and my brothers. We're following a guide that will take us around some really cool hot springs. It was all really beautiful and awesome, we had a super good time so we were all in really good moods. My step-aunt is like, hey, have you guys heard about hot potting? She tells us it's where you go and find a hot spring and bathe in it because it's really good for you. Automatically I think this is a really bad idea but I don't say anything because I didn't want to be the killjoy. She gets everyone hyped up and we all start looking around the trail for any small pools. I tell my younger brother that I think this is a really bad idea and he says me too. We decide we need to tell someone. Suddenly we all hear my step-aunt start screaming and we all know it's bad. I've never heard a scream like that. We find her standing waist deep in this pool. The water is red. At first I think it's because of the minerals but when I get closer I can see it's because she's being boiled alive. God, I really don't like thinking about this but she was literally being cooked. Her skin was turning white and flaking off into the water and she was bleeding super heavily. She was wearing cargo shorts. The water was so hot it made the metal snap basically fuse with her skin. She tried to take her shorts off but a bunch of the skin on her waist came with it. There was literally nothing we could do. We couldn't even get close to her. We tried making a rope out of clothes to throw to her but she couldn't move. My older brother ran to go get help so he didn't have to watch her die. I kind of hate him for that. I will never fucking forget her looking me in the eye, like she couldn't understand why any of it was happening. Eventually she started swaying and then she fell. By then she wasn't even screaming anymore. Worked construction when I was younger. Sent out to repave a residential road. It's a really rural area, early morning. Not a soul in sight. I'm using my roller, going a good steady slow speed. Sleepy so I'm not really paying attention. Suddenly, this little kid runs out from the tree line. Probably 3 or 4. I don't see him until it's too late. He ran right in front of me and I squashed him. He was so small he basically sank into the thick tar. I went into shock. I stopped the rig and looked around. No one saw it. No one is screaming. Literally no one saw it happen. So I made the dumbest decision in my life. I ran over him until I couldn't see him anymore. And I kept going. Half an hour later, a woman came by absolutely hysteric and asked if we'd seen her son. Nope.exe. To this day, that woman has no idea what happened to her son. He's literally right under them. I want to apologize, but I can never admit I did it. It's too late now anyway. Worst thing I've ever seen? Welder. Been on the job for about 10 years. I've seen a lot of shit. People are really fucking dumb when it comes to welding is basically what I've learned. Watched a guy literally fry his eyeballs because he forgot his face shield and didn't want to get in trouble. Worst was a new guy I'll call Dave. Dave is a really nice guy but is fucking dumb as shit. He has to be told every single day to follow even the most basic safety precautions. Me and everyone else is just counting the minutes until Dave fucks up so bad he either kills himself or everyone else. Working with Dave on a prefab project. We've been working for a couple hours, me holding Dave's hand the whole time. I have to take a break, tell Dave to work carefully until I get back. In hindsight, this was an even dumber decision than I thought. This is what I was told happened to Dave. Dave has been welding for a few hours. Dave's clothes are covered in shavings from the work. Dave does not understand that slag and metal splinters stick to fabric and have to be picked off manually. Dave gets a really good idea. Dave turns his blowtorch off to kill the flame and uses the oxygen as a blow duster to clean the metal off his clothes. Dave feels very proud of himself. Before anyone can tell him not to, Dave turns his torch back on and goes back to welding. The sparks start to fly. Dave, who has thoroughly oxygenated his clothes with his blowtorch, goes up like a fucking Roman candle. I heard the screaming all the way from the break room and I know it's Dave. Sprint back in time to see Dave running for the fire extinguisher while on fire. He doesn't make it that far. Dave has a lighter in his shirt pocket. Dave did not listen to me when I told him to take it out. Lighter explodes. Dave's clothes explode. Dave explodes. I grab the fire extinguisher and blast what is left of Dave with it. There isn't much. Most of his lower face is crispy. Skin is hanging off of his chest in big strips. Blisters. So many blisters. Dave is moaning. The inside of his mouth is totally raw. Dave inhaled the flames. He's coughing out all this fluid and pieces of his tongue. The kitty lock on his lighter, that little metal strip above the flint, has been propelled with such force that it has embedded itself in his eye. The fluid from it boiled and burned the socket and anything it touched on his face. Dave is gasping for breath. I know Dave is fucked. Dave dies before the ambulance can get there. To be honest, none of us really miss Dave. My worst memory is the car accident that killed most of my family. We, me, mom, dad, and older sister, were driving up to northern Michigan for a family reunion in the middle of summer in our old station wagon. Roads are pretty crowded because it's close to the 4th. A lot of really bad drivers are out on the road, or so Dad says, so we're taking it slow. I'm in the rear-facing seat in the very back playing my Game Boy. All our luggage is on the roof. Everyone else is talking and doing whatever. I occasionally look up to make sure I don't get carsick. Look up this time. See a bright red sports car doing like 80 coming up behind us. It's coming up fast. As it gets closer, I can see that something is wrong with the driver. He's slumped over the steering wheel. Start to freak out. Tell my dad that the car behind us is going too fast and that the driver is asleep or something. Dad tells me not to worry. He signals to move over a lane. As he starts to pass, the driver of the sports car wakes up. Sees that we're trying to pass him. I don't know if he freaked out because of that, or if maybe he thought we were on the road and he was skidding off the side. He jerks his wheel and starts to try and pass us or get ahead. Dad tries to correct but all the swerving makes him lose control. Front of the sports car clips our back bumper at high speed. Sports car driver loses control trying to correct. Our car is basically pit maneuvered. Our car is top heavy. We can feel it tilting to the side. Mom is screaming. Sister is screaming. Dad tells us all to hang on. Manages to steer us to the side of the road rather than traffic. I wish he hadn't. Car hits the side of the embankment and launches. Dad has no control anymore. Our car hit the ground and rolled about 20 times. Most of the luggage on top is crushed into the roof. Some flies off and breaks the windows. From this point I don't remember anything until the car came to a stop on its roof almost 300 feet from where the sports car hit us, except my mom shrieking and my dad screaming that he was sorry. I come to. The back of the car is crushed, one of my legs is broken. I manage to crawl out of my seat and I try to get into the front of the car. Sister is dead. Her neck is snapped at a really weird angle and her eyes are open. I'm sure I was in shock because all I could think was at least she won't scream at me when I'm taking too long in the bathroom anymore. Car is totally mangled, I can't see the passenger side where my mom was. It's been totally crushed in the rollover. Call for mom, she doesn't answer. Suddenly there's a hand on my arm. It's coming from under the steering wheel. Dad wasn't wearing a seat belt. He's basically been shoved into the space below the steering wheel. His head is partially crushed. Back is obviously broken. He is in a space no body is designed to fit in. He says something but I can't understand him. Beg him to help me. Beg him to stay alive. I can see his brain coming out of a crack in his skull. He says he loves me. That he's sorry. And then he dies. I don't really want to talk about this anymore. It took them about 3 hours to get me out. I was the only one that survived. The only reason I didn't die was because I was in the rear-facing seat. The sports car hit a truck and was basically run over, the driver died instantly. When they did the autopsy they found a ton of coke in his system. They think he was doing lines as he was driving. I honestly wish he hadn't died, he never got to face justice for killing my family. We were just trying to go on vacation. We didn't deserve this. Does anyone remember that video of the family in Tallahassee who recorded this sound coming out of the sky? I actually live in that same area and I heard it too. Live alone in a small trailer. I'm at my table reading a book and eating dinner when I hear what sounds like the distant roar of a jet engine. We'd had some really bad storms, so I figured it was probably more thunder. Sound keeps getting louder. It's definitely getting closer. Run to the door and look out at the sky, thinking maybe a plane was going down. Fuckload of trees so I can't see much. The noise is almost deafening now. It's like there's a fucking jet engine right on top of my house. The sound is literally making my head throb. The only thing I've ever felt that was even close to this is that feeling you get when you manually force yourself to relax your entire body. It's like I'm fighting to stay conscious. Drop like a sack of potatoes in the doorway. I can't move. It's like the sound is pinning me to the ground. I throw up. This goes on for what feels like eons. The sound swells in intensity and changes over time. By the end it sounded much more like some piece of huge industrial machinery as opposed to an engine. Super bright flash of light out of nowhere. Sound instantly stops. I called 911 and they told me a lot of people had reported the same thing and that they're not sure what's going on. Also, when I went into my backyard the next day, squirrel is lying at the base of a big tree. Figure it must have been stunned by the sound and fell and broke its neck. Go up to get a better look. Nope.exe. Whatever killed that squirrel, it wasn't a fall. Its eyes were bulging almost completely out of its skull. Looks like it suffered some kind of massive brain hemorrhage. I remember the way my head throbbed when the sound was on top of my trailer. Consider myself lucky. Old fag. Married. Our second child, Brandon, was sickly from birth. He couldn't sleep through the night due to all kinds of issues. At best, we were getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Felt like he never stopped crying. Then, one morning, it just gets better. Maybe his immune system kicked in as he got older. Goes from being a sickly newborn to a happy, quiet baby. Wife and I are relieved. Our lives get back on track. Our older son flourishes now that he has a fun baby brother and not a constantly shrieking housemate. I start working again. Wife starts doing classes during the week. Older son goes to school, baby goes to daycare. One night, my older son wakes up from a night terror screaming. Says something bad is going to happen to me. He won't calm down, insists that something is going to happen and that he doesn't know what to do. Eventually get him calmed down enough to get him a snack and send him back to bed with my wife while I sleep on the couch. Next morning, I'm groggy as hell. I'm not used to being woken up at night anymore. Wife is already gone by the time I get the kids in the car. The entire way there, my older son is a wreck. Says he just knows something horrible is going to happen to me today. He shuts his eyes every time we go through an intersection and tells me to be extra careful. He's had dreams like this before, but I guess this one really got to him. Try to assure him that I'll be safe. Promise I'll come see him at lunch. My office is a block away. That seems to make him feel better. As soon as I drop him off, I remember that I have a lunch meeting. Call client and try to work something out. Successfully reschedule. By the time I finally park the car and get to work, I've got everything straightened out. At lunch, I start to walk over to the school. As I go to cross the street, I remember that I promised him I'd be careful. Decide to wait for the walk sign instead of going for it like normal. Light turns, I go. Nothing happens. I have to admit, I was sort of hoping for something dramatic, like a car barreling through the intersection. At school, my son still doesn't seem like himself. Not sure what else I can do to help him. Talk to his teacher about it after we eat. She suggests I spend more time with him outside of class, just the two of us. Agree, explain about our newborn. How he was always very sickly until recently when he finally got healthy. I laughed. What a blessing it was to have such a quiet child now. We laughed. And that's when it happened. I froze. I woke up. I got the kids dressed. I put them in the car. I dropped off my older son. I rescheduled the meeting. I sprinted back to the car as fast as I could. This time I didn't wait for the light. It was almost the middle of June. I'd dressed him lightly in a t-shirt and tiny jean shorts that my wife picked out. They had suns out on one back pocket and buns out on the other. My wife loved it. I dropped my keys as I ripped them out of my pocket. A high of 85 today. I unlocked the car from 100 feet away. High humidity. I ripped open the back door. Clear skies. He was purple. No wind. The skin on the top of his head was blistered. No chance of rain. I had never dropped him off at daycare. In my office, I'd put on a sweater. The AC was cold that day. I put on a sweater, opened a window, and turned off the motion alarm on the car 3 times while my 14-month-old son baked to death not 500 feet from me. Be 24-year-old me. Meth addict. Real piece of shit. Stealing to support my habit. High 24/7. Basically deranged. Will do anything to get cash. One night I can't come up with any. My usual spots know me and they'll call the cops if I even show up. Wander around various neighborhoods just thinking. Try to open the doors on a few cars but I set an alarm off and after that I was too chicken shit to try again. Go down a cul-de-sac. Notice a house with the front door cracked slightly. I think that's weird. So I go over and look. The deadbolt is thrown but it looks like the mat is stuck so they probably thought it was shut. Look around. No one sees me. Go into the house. It's really nice. I have no idea what I'm doing. I sit on the couch for a minute and just look around. It's a really weird feeling when you're in someone's house and no one but you knows. See a purse on the counter. Go over and grab it. She's got almost 100 in her wallet. Take the whole thing. Decide to take a look around. Turn to leave. A little girl is standing in the doorway. Her eyes are huge. Nearly shit myself. Realize I'm fucked. She's about to scream. Act out of sheer panic. Grab her and cover her mouth with my hand. She's struggling. Fuck, I just don't want her to scream. What do I do? Try to whisper to her to be quiet and I'll let her go. Twist her head up so I can say it in her ear. I honestly didn't mean to hurt her and no one will believe me. I killed her. She went limp and I dropped her. Heard her mom wake up. Sprinted out of the house. Saw her story on the news that night. She was declared dead at the scene. It was cold, so I was wearing gloves and a hat. They never caught me. I got away with it. After attempting suicide a few times I got clean. Got my shit together. I've been sober for 12 years and I can never confess. This happened when I was like 4 and it still gives me chills thinking about it. Camping with Dad in the woods near our house. Lived near a huge national park so we have tons of places to go. Decide we're gonna make a trip of it and hike in a ways. From the time we parked until we stopped for lunch, we didn't hear or see a single soul. We were completely isolated. Stopped to have lunch near an old riverbed. I start to get this weird feeling. I look over to see if Dad feels it too. He looks slightly worried. Something just didn't feel right. It felt like we were being watched. Suddenly on the opposite side of the riverbed a woman appears from the bushes. She's wearing jogging clothing and sneakers. She's smiling really big at us. Hi. She calls at us. Dad doesn't answer. I'm looking for my daughter. She doesn't say this in a worried way, though. More like a mildly annoyed way. I've been looking all over for her. Have you seen her? No, my dad says. She sort of hesitates. Never stops smiling. Hi. I'm looking for my daughter. She's gotten off somewhere, can you help me look for her? What? I'm thoroughly shitting bricks at this point. Dad says no again. More firmly this time. The woman just stands there, smiling at us. Dad says we need to go. We pack up our stuff and the whole time he keeps an eye on her. Sometimes she calls stuff like hi, and have you seen my daughter anywhere? Finally packed up and ready to go. Dad checks my pack. Turns to check on her. She's fucking gone. Never heard her leave. We get the hell out of there and back to the car as fast as possible. The thing about it that was so fucked, aside from the whole thing, was that she was wearing sneakers and jogging shorts. We were deep in backcountry. There is absolutely no way she got there in those clothes. She was so totally out of place, and it really fucked with me for a while. I asked my dad about it years later and he won't talk about it. On a road trip with parents, probably middle school age. Driving through rural Oregon. Basically all forest and mountains. No major towns along this route. In the backseat dozing off and not really paying attention to anything. Early evening but it's still light out. Parents are talking quietly. Suddenly Dad goes, "Do you see that?" Mom says yes. She sounds confused. I wake up at this point and kind of sit forward to see what's going on. Dad, is he wearing a ghillie suit? Mom, no, I don't think so. Still can't see what they're pointing at. As the car gets closer, Dad slows down. We're barely going 25 now. They can't figure out what they're seeing. Then I see it. Someone is walking by the side of the road really slowly. They're taking these weird, almost loping steps. They're covered in some kind of wool or fur or something. Very dark brown, almost black. Realize that whoever it is, they're fucking huge. My dad is tall, 6 feet 4 inches, and I knew this thing would be taller by at least 6 inches. We're almost beside it. Mom starts freaking out. Mom, speed up. Go around it. Dad is in a trance or something, he can't stop looking at. We are literally right behind it. Mom is practically crying. Everyone in the car looks out the window as we pull up beside it. It looks back at us. It is not a person. It has no face, just hair. In the middle of where its face should have been are these two tiny beady black eyes. It looked right at me. It was predatory. It lunges at the car. Dad floors it. The thing doesn't chase us, it just goes right back to walking slowly along the road. Mom is crying and hitting my dad's arm and telling him he's an idiot for doing that. Dad is pale and won't even react. Pull off at the first motel we see, spend the rest of the night not talking much. Definitely the weirdest thing we saw that trip. Fucked up woods thread. Fucked up woods thread. Here's mine to get things started, sorry in advance, it's TL, DR. Greater than 17. Me and my best friend decide we're gonna go stay at his parents' cabin. They're cool with it, my parents think we're just staying at his house for the long weekend, long story, but my parents are weird about letting me do things. His parents drive us up to the cabin and help us get all our food and stuff inside. We agree on a meeting time 3 days from now. They take off. Best friend and I get each other all hyped up, we're running around like retards. Get our paintball guns and decide to go shoot shit in a woods. Get some basic supplies together and take off. He knows this area really well, so I let him take the lead. We end up next to a river. Shooting at the fish, the birds, whatever. Suddenly he stops. He's looking at the top of this cliff in the distance. Do you see that? He asks. Can't see shit, Captain. Gets out his binoculars and hands them to me, tells me where to look. He's looking at this one tree that's noticeably taller than the others. So? He says he doesn't remember that being there. Obviously I'm not really that freaked out. There's no way he remembers every single tree out here. Tell him he's being an idiot and that it's probably just grown since he last saw it. Well then, why are there no leaves on it? Look at it again. I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird looking, but maybe lightning hit it or something. Can't figure out why he's being so weird about it. Eventually get him to move on. Later that evening, we've got a campfire going in the fire pit out back. Break out the bottle of Jack we managed to get for the occasion. Well, on our way to being hammered, lightweights. Friend decides it'll be funny to antagonize any Bigfoots or whatever that might be lurking nearby. Hey, you fucking Bigfeet. Come out and fight me. Nearly pissing ourselves laughing. Friend digs a smoldering piece of wood from the fire and flings it into the woods. As soon as he flings it, something crashes into the woods behind us. Both of us nearly shit bricks. Friend wants to go back inside. He's got that same weird expression and he seems really uneasy again. Ask him what the fuck is up with him. He reluctantly tells me that he's supposed to go inside if this kind of thing happens. Says who? Says his parents. This is totally not like him and I keep trying to get him to tell me what the hell is going on. He says if we can just go inside he'll tell me whatever I want. Agree, we go inside. This next part is easier if I just write it out. We both grew up near the Warm Springs Res out in Central Oregon, so the culture kind of bled over into ours. A lot of us growing up heard about the Wendigo and Skinwalkers, not always by those names, but the idea was the same. So we get inside and he starts telling me about how when he came up here the first time his parents made him promise that if he ever felt like something was wrong, or saw something that he knew was wrong, he was to come inside right away and lock all the doors. He said the only thing they'd ever tell him was that there were things up here that were very old and looked like things they weren't. Nothing had ever happened to him before, but he'd also always followed their instructions. And you know, I kind of didn't even question it after that. My family wasn't into the whole thing, but I'd seen some shit while a different friend and I were tripping in the desert, another story, and I respected that he wanted to follow what they said. We stayed inside until the next morning.
Editor's note. OP never posted the rest of this story or posted any more green texts after this.